Alright guys, welcome back. In this episode, we'll be talking about the for next loop. Okay, so this is a very important loop in Visual Basic application, right? And in fact, in any programming language, being able to understand the for next loop is so crucial because there's just so much that you can accomplish with the for next loop. Okay, so it may be a seemingly easy concept, right? Which I wouldn't deny, but it can accomplish a lot. It can accomplish a lot if you know how to use it, right? So not just in VBA, but in practically any programming language. So the for next loop basically starts with a counter, right? You have a counter. So this counter can be any variable, and it has a starting point for the counter and an ending point for the counter. And then you have the step size. The step size basically meaning the increment, right? The increment of the for loop as it moves into the next iteration. Okay, so by default, the step size is 1, but you can also have pretty much any step size that you wish, including negative value, right? So you could have a step size of -2, -5, 5, 10, right? So if you just leave it as blank, it's going to go as just 1. Okay. Anyhow, I always encourage you to specify the step size because it's just a good programming practice. Okay. And then what you're going to have is the sandwich in between the for and the next. And this is where the code runs. Okay. The sandwich, right? As I like to call it, right? The statement, right? Where you run all your operations for each iteration. Okay. And then once you've run the operation, you have to use the word next. Okay. The next meaning that you're moving to the next iteration. Okay, so if you're starting from 1, then it runs here, and the next iteration it goes to 2, 3, 4, and until the end. Okay, so that's in essence what the for next loop is. Okay, so as I've said, it's seemingly simple, but you can accomplish a lot with it, right? So let's just get into the fundamentals of for loop. Okay, for loop, and we're just gonna do some examples here, right? And then in the next lecture, we will be going into a real world example of the for next loop example, right? And this is one of the problems for the big data, right? Basically about finding outliers, okay? And I've gone through them in my class, and we'll be going through them here as well, okay? So now we're just going to dim I as long. Now we're just going to go through the basics before we move on to the more complex one. And of course, I've forgotten to mention that with the for loop, you could always exit the for loop. Okay, suppose you have reached a condition and you like to exit the for loop, then you could always just use the exit for. Okay, you could always exit the for loop. Okay, so that's where it is. Okay, you could always exit the for loop whenever you want. Okay, so let's proceed with the example, right? So I'm going to have for I equals to 1 to 20, right? So make sure you have the watch window and locals window, right? In the future videos, we will be going through all the ways of debugging and error handling and how to utilize all of them. But nonetheless, I'll cover just a little bit of the watch window and the locals window, right? And how to basically get around with them. Okay. So, but we will go into detail and specifics in the debugging and error handling section. So I've set my counter, right? For my counter is from 1 to 20, and I'm going to set the step size. So the step size is going to be just step 1, right? We're just going to have step 1. So this is a very basic for loop example. So we need a counter. Okay, counter from start to end, and a step size. Okay, I do apologize if I'm going a little bit slower than I should, right? Because the reason is because I assume that most of my viewers here have no understanding of Visual Basic application whatsoever. So that's why I always try to make it a point to elaborate on every little detail as I could, right? So because I want to make sure that you guys get a hang of it, right? Because you're all going to be future coders and future VBA developers, and you're going to go and achieve great things. So I want you to make sure that you have a very solid understanding, okay, from this playlist, right? which is completely free, by the way. Okay, we have to end the for next with the next. Remember when I said that, right? Okay, so next I. Okay, right? We're gonna debug.print I, and then we're gonna go next I. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm just going to run the code, right? Debug.print, and we're gonna test it, right? We're gonna test it. I'm just gonna run the code, and as you could expect, you see the results in the immediate window. You have for iteration 1, you have debug.print. That's the statement here. This is the statement. Okay, this is the statement. Okay, so it's returning as 1, and then it's moving to the next iteration 2. Then I becomes 2, right? So it's going all the way down to 20, right? So this is the most basic form of the for loop. Okay, this is the most basic form of the for loop. We can also do something a little bit more, I don't know, I wouldn't say more challenging, but just maybe something slightly different. Okay, slightly different. For next x example 2. Okay, and what we're going to do here is I'm going to do the same thing. Dim I is long, right? So we need a counter. Okay, we need a counter. Start to end and step size. Okay, we have to specify all of this, right? And then what I'm going to say is for I equals to 1 to 20, and I'm going to have step size of still 1, right? So and then what I'm going to say is, remember, you could reference range in this way, right? Sheet 1 range A and something like the value, right? So we're just going to use I here, right? Instead of a value, we're going to use I. So we've covered this before, right? On how to reference all these ranges and how to combine them, right? So make sure you watch the playlist if you haven't, right? If you are missing on this part. So I'm just going to put some value, right, into range A. So A is going to be, on the first iteration, it's going to be range A1. The second iteration is going to be range A2. So A1 is going to be the value of 4 in the beginning, right? Then it's going to go to value 5. I'm just doing something entirely random, okay? And then end the for next, okay? We're going to end it. You always have to end the for next loop, right? Whenever you have the for, you need to end it, regardless of whether you break the loop, whether you exit for or whatever it is. You always need to have the next, okay? It always has to go that way, right? Now, what I'm going to do is we're just going to take this value and we're going to put it into the immediate windows. We're going to put it into the watch. So I'm going to highlight this and I'm just going to highlight this and put it into the watch, right? I'm going to highlight this and put it in the watch. Likewise, I'm going to take this and also highlight it, right click, and also add it to the watch. Okay, so now we're going to run the code. We're going to run the code in real time, okay, to see the results. So F8, we're going to see that in the first iteration, I is 1 and A1, right? A basically range A1 dot value is 4, right? So as we move to the second one, I is 2 and this is 3, right? So the locals window, as I said, this is going to be your friend when you deal with all these big arrays, right? We're looping through arrays and all of that. This is when the locals window will come in handy. We'll go through all of them in the future, right? So for now, just familiarize as to how to copy sections of your code, paste it under the watch, right? To view the results in real time. Okay, so 5, 9, and etc. Okay, so you can see all the results. Okay, and that's about it. Okay, and of course I've also stated that you can change the step size. So if I change the step size here to 2 and I run the code, what do you think we're getting at? Okay, we're getting 1, and then we're moving debug.print I1. The next I, the step size is 2, right? So it's going to go from 1 to 3, not to 2, right? It's increment by 2. So debug.print I is going to be 3, and then it's going to be 5, 7. So it's going in increment of 2. Okay, so that's about it for the fundamentals of the for next loop. Okay, in the next example, we'll be going through something more complicated, right? A real world example of big data analytics. Okay, and we will see how we can really utilize and push the functionality of for next to accomplish a lot. Okay, not just in VBA, but in programming in general. Okay, all right, guys, take care. Till then, thank you.